Hello, everybody. This is Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome back to, drum roll please, we have a name for the podcast. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Yes, we have settled on a name. After much discussion about this and debate, Rutgers Rant is the choice because that's really all we do here is rant. Special thanks to Richard Swift for the suggestion. Rutgers Rant narrowly beat out Julia Herman's Playhouse in a vote of 37 Madison Avenue marketing specialists for the honor. I am joined, as always, by James Cratch and Keith Sargent. You guys feel good about the name? You like it? You feel?
I like the name.
You like the name?
I kind of wanted my name to be incorporated somewhere, but I guess I lost out on that debate.
Right. You wanted the Rutgers Rant with Keith Sargent? Is that what you were hoping for that? Yeah,
exactly.
That's fair, considering your special value here on the show. We couldn't do it without you. All right, let's get right to it, guys. We have clarity. This is like the movie where you figured out the ending after the opening credits, right? I mean, you kind of knew after they lost to Kansas, this team was going to go 1-11, and you kind of knew all along that when it did go 1-11, we would have a moment like we did after the Michigan State game where Pat Hobbs would come out and say, yeah, Chris Ash is my coach. The statement was, no surprise to me, at least, except for maybe two words. And those two words were significant improvement. We have yet to get a chance to ask Patrick Hobbs what he means by significant improvement. So let's define it for him. I mean, what do you think now that he has to see from this team in year 4 to make this the right decision? Sarge, you go first. Tell me what you think significant improvement means.
Yeah, my guess, is he won't put a win total on it, despite what fans and what we will be asking,
right.
And which is probably the right course of action because you have no idea. Like, first off, the schedule's a little bit harder next year. I think Kratz kind of broke it out. The first 3 games, certainly they don't have an opportunity to find early season momentum like they had last year. Then they have, a break, in which they have, 4 or 5 games where the schedule softens up, and then it gets tough toward the end with Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State. So you just never know how the season's going to go, right? Because, you could say, well, he needs to win 5 or 6 games to show a vast improvement, but then you have the players getting suspended, through no fault of his own, maybe, or, your star cornerback like Bless Austin goes down in week 1. You just never know how a season's going to go. So I don't expect him, nor probably should he, put a win total on it.
What is it then?
That being said, I think you kind of need to me, improvement, and, maybe I'm going to sound too much, of the Hobbs type line, but I think they just need to be more competitive. They need to win more games. 1-11 is not acceptable. So you need to win more games. You can't go, but you also can't go 2-10 either. So you need to win some more games. You need to be competing for a bowl game, all that. So, but I don't think you're going to get a Pat Hobbs statement in which he says, is bowl or else. I don't expect that. And, again, when you make a statement like that, you also have to weigh in the fact that you never know how the season's going to go, injuries and, other off-field issues that, could come into play.
All right, so Kratch, what should it be then? I mean, what if you were him? He's not going to say what it really is. If you were Pat Hobbs, what do you think significant improvement needs to be?
At least 3 wins, because 3? When I say 3 wins, yes. Well, here's the thing. When I say 3 wins because if you're 3-9, that means you either beat Boston College or you won a game in the conference, which Chris Ash has failed to do in 2 of his 3 seasons at Rutgers now.
You pointed it out to him too, didn't you? Did you not?
I did.
Yes. Okay, go on.
But I think we'll get to that later. But I think that's a major issue. It's one thing to go. It's very hard for a Power 5 program to go winless in their conference, especially with 9 conference games now.
Right.
Like that's a scarlet letter that's usually reserved for like the Vanderbilts and the Kansases of the world. But anyway, I think you got to win at least 3 games, and I think you need to be competitive in all the games. And when I say competitive, I think that it's definitely fair to wonder, like, why hasn't this team broken through and upset Wisconsin or upset Michigan State or upset Northwestern when everybody else in the Big Ten seems to do that? Right. I mean, PJ Fleck, year 2, he's got the axe and he's going to a bowl game at Minnesota. I looked at this team. I mean, I still say it, having been in all 12 of the games Rutgers played this year, I don't feel like there was a massive talent disparity in a lot of the conference games they played.
Right.
I think that improvement means you need to have an offense that functions, which this team doesn't have. So I would say 3 wins. You're competitive in basically all your games. I'll give you a mulligan if you get blown out by Ohio State or you get blown out by Michigan. But other than that, I think every game needs to be competitive. When I say competitive, I mean, it's a touchdown game or at the second half at some point. And I think the offense needs to actually show signs of life. And if you get those 3 boxes, that's probably enough to say significant improvement.
I'm sorry, I just totally disagree. And then this is where we're at with this. The fact that when you set the bar as low as it was set this year at 1-11, that can't be the standard. Right. I mean, this team won 4 games in his second year, to regress to 1-11 now, you can't just take the needle and put it back to that. I mean, 3-9 is not going to appease this fan base. It means that you had another year where you lost 8 Big Ten games, essentially. I mean, I just don't, this is why we get back to this problem with where the program is now. You're going all in on, you're giving him a 4th year, and we can make the case pro or against that. But, if he goes 3-9 next year, I mean, are you really going to, okay, well, look, we made significant improvements. No one's going to buy that, right? I mean, if you're a fan, you're buying tickets and suddenly, we went from 1-11. Now we're 3-9. I mean,
no, I'm not. I guess I should articulate myself better. I am not saying the 3-9 should be like, let's have a parade, like that's the goal. I'm just saying I would have to imagine in Hobbs' mind, if he's not going to come out, and when we get a chance to, we're going to ask him, what do you mean? What's the thing? Right. I agree with Sarge. You can't set a number like you got to win 6 games because you don't know what's going to happen. And let's say somehow they win 7. Then all of a sudden, you've boxed yourself in a corner. You got to give him a big extension.
He's not going to say it, but you also have to know what it is in your head. And I think it's got to be. I think it's going to be closer to five wins next year to have any chance of year 5. I mean, in my estimation, because at 5 wins, all right, then you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. You finally come back and you win a couple of Big Ten games, and you're showing real progress, measurable progress in year 4. I mean, that's what I ask for.
No, I agree with you. I also think, and you're right, Palady, because this is what they've dug for themselves. 1-11 after 3 years. We've talked about Graciano, and I think their records were similar. Ash might actually have a better 3-year record than Graciano, but in year 3, they were way more competitive, and so in year 3 they won 5-7 under Greg. So I mean, when you go 1-11. You're right, but I also think there's other things that you need to look for, right? I think recruiting needs to be better.
Absolutely.
And we all know that they're going to go down the JUCO route. They're already 13th in the Big Ten right now. I don't expect it to get markedly better. So, this year's recruiting class isn't going to be great. But I think going from throughout this entire off season, and a lot of those commitments for 2019 are going to start coming into play come June and July. By the time we even get to next season, we're going to know how recruiting stands. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the other things, we give them a softball at a press conference about the birthplace of college football. Next year is the 150th anniversary. Embrace that. Embrace the little things. Market yourself better. Throughout New Jersey circles. Get the attendance is going to be brutal. Well, guess what? Have more events throughout the state. Try to be a softer Chris Ash, so to speak. All those things are little things that I think he can really improve upon. If we're being fair about Chris Ash, I think is beyond the off field. There's only so much of a leap that they can make going into next year. 5 wins is totally ambitious. 4 wins They did that a couple years ago, 4-8. So, what constitutes, success from that standpoint? I think it's the little things.
Can we talk about the schedule? So, Kratch, you think the schedule is harder? I'm not convinced, and this is my reasoning. I think the crossover games are easier than they were last year. If you consider you're subbing Minnesota for Northwestern, and at Iowa is an easier game than at Wisconsin. So let me just go through this really quick. All right, the first four you mentioned. You got to, if you don't beat UMass, we should just burn down the stadium. So UMass, then at Iowa, Boston College, and at Michigan. 1 and 3, although BC, again, is a team that you should be able to beat, or at least on equal terms. And then you've got a 5-game stretch where I think all 5 of those games are winnable. Maryland, at Indiana, Minnesota, Liberty, at Illinois. So
no,
that's not a murderous row of teams there before the 3 at the end that, of course, you'll be double-digit underdogs for. I mean, what's your take on the schedule? Why do you think it's harder?
No, I agree with you. I think when we get to like July and it's talking season, we're going to be talking about, hey, like there's 6 wins on this schedule potentially, and maybe like in Boston College is going to become the Northwestern game that was this year. Well, that's the swing game. We don't know. Even Iowa. I mean, Iowa. That's they usually start kind of slow. That's a kind of a weird game. No, I agree with you guys. Like, I don't think that 3 and 9 should be like what they're aiming for. I'm just saying, and Steve, you wrote this in your column last week. They just went 1 and 11 and had like a epic disaster of a season. And there really was, in hindsight, never much inclination it seems from Hobbs to even consider a move.
Right.
So I just have to think that whatever, I mean, if he was steadfast at 1 and 11 and 0 and 9 in the Big Ten, I have to think that in his head, significant improvement is maybe it fits a lower bar than what we would expect. I think Sarge is absolutely right about the Chris Ash 2.0. Whenever he speaks to the media next, I think there are 2 things he could do that would take absolutely no effort that I think would be a good faith move for the fan base. One, and it sounds silly, is to announce that the white helmets are going away and the team's only going to wear a scarlet helmet going forward. Because fans care about that. That seemed to upset a lot of people. And 2, and I know this predates before I was on the beat, you have to announce that the spring game awards are being reinstituted effective immediately.
Yep.
Those are 2 moves he can make right there. We're only going to wear scarlet helmets. We're bringing back the spring awards.
The spring awards is big because
I don't think that's gonna.
No, but
I'm not saying it's going to change the world, but it's a gesture.
It is. And Cratch is right about the latter point. The white helmets. I don't know because if his point, I guess, would be, well, recruits like it, and kind of like what the uniforms back in 2012 wasn't exactly popular with the fan base or with the media, but the recruits apparently liked it, which is basically all he cares about. But the other part is 100% accurate. I think that would be a gesture that if he was to bring that back, I think that would be that would help.
Yeah, I'd like to hear him say that we've made mistakes. I'd like to hear him say that. That would be a good step in my book. I think for the fan base is, you don't hear a lot of that. Sure, after games, he said it's on me. I've got to coach better. But as far as program building, Chris Ash, I think, he in his mind, he is facing obstacles at Rutgers that are out of his control. And in reality, a lot of them are things he's created. I'd love to hear him admit that. We screwed up this offense. We've had 3 different systems in 3 years. That was a mistake. We haven't done the things, we haven't recruited enough at a high enough level yet. I mean, things like that would be, I don't know, that would go a long way toward me, at least, if he recognizes that he's got to improve as a program builder for the program, to go forward. All right. So on that note, do you want to just jump right into true or false?
Sure.
Let's do it.
True. Chris Ash will be returning. True. I got my true.
You got it. Oh, good start. We've got that one right. That's like the question on the 200 points you get for signing your name on the SATs. We got it right. All right. True or false? Chris Ash will take Rutgers to a bowl game as head coach.
True.
Wow.
Yeah.
True.
Oh, false. Come on. True or false?
I mean, I just think if he's the coach for more than one season.
Yeah, I don't think. Right. I'll be honest with you. Having talked to Pat Hobbs behind the scenes, in recent weeks, months, whatever you want to call it, I think he's going to say, he deserves 5 recruiting classes. Wow. I mean, that's pretty much. I think he's been on the record, not just talking behind the scenes about it to boosters and to other people, but I think I think he's going to get 5 years. Right, so
here's the next question: if Chris Ash goes 1-11 in 2019, he's back as head coach. True or false?
False. There's no way
he can't go 1-11. No.
If Chris Ash goes 3-9, he's back as head coach.
True.
2019.
True.
Gosh, I'm going false there, guys. I just do not think Pat Hobbs will be making that decision. If they go 3-9, it's going to be people are not going to tolerate it, and they didn't barely tolerated this.
Remember this, though, Steve. I mean, a year from now, we could be talking. I know, President Barchi might actually outlive all of us, but we could be talking about a situation where they're at least getting closer to looking for a new president. So
right.
All those things are you don't see schools go for a new football coach when they're in the midst of uncertainty. With at the top of the university.
I mean, look at USC.
Right. Well,
I mean, it boggles my mind that Clay Helton seems like a nice guy, but I mean, it's the best job in America.
They did win the Pac-12.
Weren't they number 3 a couple years ago? Weren't they third in the country?
I mean, 5-7. He won the Pac-12 a couple years ago. So.
All right, true or false? Rutgers will add at least 6 players via JUCO grad transfer route. True or false?
True.
True or false? No significant player is going to transfer out this winter, despite concerns that it will be a mass exodus. True or false?
Significant player.
I guess we have to define significant.
Yeah, you have to define significant.
Significant progress. Now we need significant player.
Yeah.
Like Jonathan Lewis. I think he might be. What? Give me a level of a kid, a starter type player. True or false?
A starter. I'll say true.
Okay. Pratt, you agree that we're not going to lose a
I'm
starter?
saying that they won't lose a starter.
Yeah.
I'll say true, just because I think if you look at the redshirt juniors, they don't have a terribly strong group of redshirt juniors, like guys like Marcus Applefield, who could leave and then go start someplace else. I don't really see that happening here, so I'll say true.
True or false? Keeping Ash and the 1-11 season is going to lead to a decline of at least 5,000 season tickets.
True.
Yeah.
But I think it's more than that.
More than that.
True.
What is the number now? What is the number of season tickets sold this year?
It was 22,000. It
17?
It stayed status quo from last year to this year.
Right.
It stayed status quo. And they weren't expecting, any, this is from numbers that we reported in, right on the eve of the season. So,
right.
It's absolutely going to go lower. Mm-hmm. 5,000 probably sounds like a pretty good number based on like the emails and comments and all the other stuff. So yeah, I say true.
Okay. True.
And what I meant by it's more than that is that I think, yes, the 1-11 in Ash is an issue, but people are realizing that, they can get the tickets for $5 on StubHub. Right. So even if they were we want to if you're on board with Ash or ambivalent about Ash, I mean, it just makes economic sense to not buy them.
Absolutely. True or false? Artur Sikowski will be the starting quarterback in the season opener versus UMass. True or false?
True.
True.
I'm going to go false here too. I think they've got to find someone. We've mentioned the name already. I know that might be a hard sell, but I just think that Brendan Wimbush, makes Jersey guy and whatever, but I don't know if he fits McNulty's offense. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's going to be other grad transfers. Right. We all know that there's going to be other guys like Kyle Bolin, who was a perfect example. There's going to be guys that we know, like the average football fan doesn't even think of. Right. So I think we can all agree that they're going to go grad transfer hunting, if not JUCO, but certainly grad transfer. I don't know if it's going to be Wimbush, but they're going to bring someone to push him. I still think, Sikowski works his butt off. He has a year under the system. I think James is right. Yeah, I think it's true. True or false? UMass would be a good fit for Greg Schiano. I love this question. You like that, dude? You like it, huh?
I do. I like it. I mean, UConn. I know we're really slumming from, but it is what it is. I mean, the Tennessee thing happened. That was real. Syracuse. If something happens with Babers, we talked about that a little bit. Boston College. I saw a couple tweets out there, from national reporters saying that Adazio could be in trouble at 7-5, which kind of sounds ridiculous to me because Boston College 7-5. I mean, I think they go to bowl games every year. I think
that's pretty good at Boston College. Yeah, what do you want?
Exactly. It's ridiculous that they're even talking about it. But if that opens up, absolutely. But UMass, to get to that point, that might be it at this point for him. He might actually have to finally go down that lower level to rebuild his reputation.
What about Ohio State? They love him there. I mean, I guess he's had a bad year as a defensive coordinator.
He didn't get the interim job. Not me. I mean, this is the people who were covering it. Took that as a sign that Ryan Day is is the clear favorite, the heir apparent. If he was as beloved, it could have very well been that everything that happened with Urban, they looked at the North Carolina, the Tennessee situation, and they said, we're not going to go down this road, in which we name Graciano the interim, and all of a sudden have a mutiny on our hands. So. I think, that was a sign that, he's probably not going to get the Ohio State job if and when Urban decides to hang it up.
True or false? Matt Brown to UNC was a brilliant hire. True or false?
You know what? I mean, you should answer that question, being like the North Carolina alum. But I laughed at the Herm Edwards.
You did, I did too.
Right?
Yeah, I know.
And that hasn't been embarrassing. They had actually a pretty good year.
Yeah.
All things considered. In some ways, that might work out. That really might work out, especially if he hires, a really good top flight staff and just becomes like a CEO type guy.
That's what's going to have to happen, right? I mean, he's got to be the CEO and recruit well. So Kratz, you like the hire?
No, I just because now I will say is I saw some tweet that he was telling people he was going to bring Gene Chizik in as defensive coordinator and get Cliff Kingsbury. Like, if you do that, I mean, okay, yeah. Like, if this guy brings in this top-notch staff, I just thought it was so weird. Like, I think North Carolina, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast, Steve.
I don't care. It's football.
It's a good job. I mean, it's, everyone, like, you're always the second focus. There's money there. You got the Jordan Brand Nike stuff. I just think, like, that's a job where you at least should maybe like take one or two phone calls. But I mean, for all I know, like I don't think finances would be an issue there. But Larry Fedora had a big buyout. I mean, is Mac Brown working for free basically? Like,
great question.
I'm trying to see his contract terms. Maybe that's part of the deal, or he's going to have assistants who are making more than he is at the coordinator level. So I think it's a puzzling hire, and I think the Herm thing was weird and it's working, but at the same time, I think Arizona State has a hard, they're only going to be what they are. I think North Carolina is a program that could win 10 games a year somewhat consistently with the right coach.
I will say this, these people, Les Miles, Mac Brown, these guys who have probably $50 million in the bank and get paid to be on TV for little work, they're wired differently than me. Like, why in the world? He's 67 years old. What are you doing? But that's completely unrelated. True or false? Ohio State deserved a spot in the playoff over Oklahoma. True or false?
True.
If
they win on Saturday.
Assuming they both win.
Yeah, if they win. I mean, I think it boils down to, they'll be in, two teams that finish in the top 12 in Penn State and Michigan was number 4, and Oklahoma doesn't have that. I mean, their resumes are very, very close. But
they've got a worse loss though. That doesn't bother you. That Purdue smacked that team around. That doesn't give you. Oklahoma doesn't have a loss like that.
No. I mean, I think it boils down to the wins at that point, and they're both champions of their conference. And I think maybe the Big Ten might have just been better than the Big 12 this year. Close, but I think they're better.
All right, onward to 2019, and let's spend a few minutes to preview this. And here's my question to you, Kratz. You got this personnel in better than I do, a better grasp of it. My sense is, and just looking at what this team is losing defensively, that it's more significant than you'd think for a 1-11 team when you lose Wharton, Hampton, Roberts, Morris, I know Austin's been gone for a while, but the guy from the start of the season, Kai Hester. I mean, you're losing a lot of guys in this defense. Do you think this defense, as for what it was at the end of the year, could take a step back in 2019 based on what it's losing?
It could. I mean, the one thing about Wharton is they feel good about in the secondary. I'll start with secondary, back to front. They feel good about the young safeties they have, guys who saw a little bit of action, didn't really play. Trey Avery is a guy who only played in 2 games due to injury. I would assume they're going to try to get him a hardship. He's a guy who Chris Ash has always raved about and talked about. A guy they recruited at Ohio State.
Right.
But we've never seen a kid play.
Yeah.
So, in theory, maybe they're not as concerned about losing Wharton because, well, we know Avery Young is going to look like he's going to be a pretty good ball player, and Trey Avery's there. But we've never – so it's kind of blind faith that Trey Avery will be a playmaker because we've never seen him play. At linebacker, I think they have to feel very good about the fact that Tyshawn Fogg played really well.
He did. He looked good against Michigan State, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they need – he's one of those – when we start talking about Chris Ash and recruiting, he's only recruited a handful of 4-star players, and none of them have really panned out in a big way yet. They need Fogg to be one of those guys, whether it's a weak side linebacker or a middle linebacker, depending on where they put him. Defensive line, I think they should feel good about their ends.
Yep.
They've got Turdoff, they've got Loomer. Willington Prevalon played really well down the stretch. Maybe the lights kind of clicked on for him, and he'll be a guy who can have a big senior season for them. I don't know necessarily that the defense is going to take a step back in a big way because I don't think the guys that they're losing were necessarily the most talented players on the field. I think obviously losing Saquon Hampton is important, but it wouldn't shock me if this defense doesn't make much progress going into 2019.
Right.
Yeah, they need depth along the defensive line, that's for sure. I think James might have painted too much of a rosy picture. I agree with you. Tverdov's going to be really good. Lamore was okay; he was solid, but they need depth. They need a lot of help along that defensive line. Still not sold on the on the linebackers. I agree with you that Fogg. But it was only 1 game. He didn't have a great year overall. I think Avery Young. I think he's going to be spectacular. I watched him last couple of games, and he showed improvement. I think he's going to be really, really good. But then the 2 safeties. You lose. I know. You're going to lose one of the 2. Of your 3 starters there. So. I think you might be painting a little bit too much of a rosy picture. They need help, and that's probably where they're going to get the most help from, like the JUCO ranks.
Right. No, you're right. I think the front line, the starting 11, could be okay, but I think you're right. I neglected to mention the depth is still a major concern, top to bottom.
All right, so now the offense. Give me one reason to feel good about what's going to change there offensively. 3 years, it hasn't gotten better. In 3 years, Art Sikowski didn't get better from game 1 to game 11. You might disagree with that. That's how I feel about it. You've got the 2 running backs, but we have an identified receiver. Is there something that you can tell me about 2019 that the offense will be better?
It's not going to get better unless they bring in better personnel. And I'm sorry, but that's just we've seen these wide receivers. I know they've had 2 different wide receivers coaches. I know they've had different offenses, but if you can get open, you can get open. And there's been drop passes, and again the lack of 50-50 balls. They need better wide receivers. That's for sure. Offensive line, that's still an issue. You lose your left tackle. That's an area of concern that they're probably going to need to get a plug and play grad transfer or JUCO again, just to add depth and, get someone to play right away. So, and again, I think you're going to need to push Sikowski. I think he's going to be the starter, but you certainly need to bring in a guy who can compete and possibly be in contention to start from day 1 next season.
Right. So, Kratz, you agree?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing they have to do, in my opinion, is it's good that you're keeping continuity. You've got your same offensive coordinator again. John McNulty, I think, is going to have to evolve the offense a little bit. One thing that someone mentioned to me is you watch, and obviously they're not going to run like an air raid. But you watch a lot of college football games, and you just see different route concepts and schemes that a lot of these throws that guys like Garrett Minshew or Kyler Murray, they're easy throws. And I look back at this season, and I never felt like there was really a moment where Art or Gio or anybody had an easy throw to make. Like, oh, here's like an easy 20-yard because we schemed the guy open. And I think part of it's because the receivers just, I think, were the most disappointing position group on the roster by far. They just never took a step forward. But I think it's also just because maybe they need to evolve. They need to maybe be a little less, a little more creative or inventive with what they do. I think that Travis Vokalek is like, he didn't have a great season by any means, but at least I wrote about this in the film review. He showed signs of, okay, like this kid could be really good. He at least flashed at points. The other guys, none of them did. So they've really got to count on those, Lacewell, Jordan, and Paul Woods making major impact next year. And they got to go get a guy or two, grad transfer, juke, or whatever. They need an impact playmaker. I think if you get Art a playmaker or two and he takes the steps forward that he has to take, I think he will have a much better sophomore season.
Are there big – go ahead. Yep, sorry.
I'm going to say, can we just at least agree that the highlight of the season was the Crash film review?
Oh my gosh!
When you look back on it, when you're trying to go like where the areas of the most improvement, I think that was certainly
this season did not deserve. We did not deserve it. No one did. It deserved the film review. Let's be honest.
It really was. I mean, we joke about it, but I even read it today. Like it was really good.
Of course.
I was dragging doing that last one.
But you came through. The effort, A for effort there, Kratz, for this getting the final film review.
And may I just say about the offensive line? I'm really intrigued to see what they do there because you're losing Tariq Cole. Raekwon O'Neal, I know they're very high on, but it's like, redshirt freshman, at left tackle. I don't think Kamal Seymour is a guy you can move to left tackle. I almost wonder if Kamal Seymour might move inside finally. Ever since I got the people said, he'd be better as a guard, he'd be better as a guard. Well, this might be the opportunity. But at the same time, I think what McNulty said about Reggie Sutton when we were discussing his blocking tight end, moonlighting, it's a lot to ask a kid like him to put 50 pounds on in an offseason and play tackle in the Big Ten. So I agree. I think they got like that has to be. They have to get some sort of grad transfer or junior college starting tackle to play left or right.
I just don't know. And this is again. We'll have Todrick on for a full show about recruiting closer to signing that. I just don't. Are Big Ten playmakers out there? I mean, the playmakers they've added through grad transfer, haven't done anything really for the most part. I mean, can they find a guy who can come in and step in right away? And why is that guy available? I guess I come back to that, and you see some names that float out there, but do you think that is something that can actually be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, we see it all throughout the country.
Yeah, but
grad transfer market is growing year in year out. It's just this is college football 2018 is especially now with the new transfer rules and you if you're in good academic standing, we're going to see more and more impact transfers.
The keyword is absolutely impact, though, Sarge. Is there a guy out there who's going to come in and be the playmaker this program lacks? That's my question.
Historically, Rutgers has never, predating Chris Ash or whatever, but historically Rutgers has never done great with impact transfers. You mentioned, Lalota or, Nate Robinson or Witherspoon, guys like that, longtime Rutgers fans. That wasn't all that long ago, of guys who, left Penn State or Michigan or whatever. Historically, they haven't. And the general rule of thumb with that, right, Steve, is that, if you're Michigan, if you're Jim Harbaugh, you're not letting your a guy who you really want leave to go to Rutgers. So if all of a sudden Amir Mitchell goes, everyone's like, oh my goodness, like he has a talent to play at Michigan, he's going to Rutgers. Well, the rule of thumb is normally there's some baggage there, or, Jim Harbaugh is not letting Amir Mitchell as a freshman go to Rutgers if he wants to keep him, right? That's generally the rule of thumb. So I guess from your point, are there impact guys? You could be skeptical for sure, but I think college football 2018, this is what it is. We're going to see more and more programs trying to get better, in a hurry based on almost like a free agency process.
Right. And the problem is, and again, we are not the recruiting experts, but it certainly does not seem like that impact player is in the incoming freshman class either. And I don't know. Again, Cratch, feel for the roster better than I do. I don't think that impact player is hiding on the roster. Am I wrong? Is there a guy there that you can see come out of spring and go, hey, there is the Leonte Carew that we've been missing? Guy. And Carew, everyone talks about, he had one of the greatest receivers in Rutgers history. It was not a big factor early on in his career. He came on later. So what do you think?
No, I think the one guy I look at after this season is I think Vokalek has the ability to be a very good receiving tight end.
Right.
I think he's shown flashes of being capable of that. And if he grows into his big frame and he gets another year in the weight room, maybe next year, he looked like Gronk in the spring, and then he kind of cooled off in the summer and he didn't play as much early on in the year. He played well down the stretch. Maybe he has that kind of breakout year. I mean, that's a good place to start, I think. A 6'6" tight end that can run the seam and get open would be a good place to start as you kind of move Art forward. I think, but I agree with you. There's no impact player there. I think this talk of fans have of moving Blackshear to wide receiver is silly because, Raheem Blackshear looks really good when he's matched up against ends and linebackers.
Yes.
You put Raheem Blackshear on a cornerback, he's going to look like the other receivers. He's not going to be able to get open. So I think that you can have success as a grad transfer when you're going on the offensive line, because I think Rutgers does have a lot to offer. Like a 1 year, an older guy who wants to get an MBA or something, they can kind of appeal to that kid, the kid who clearly is good enough to start in college, but not necessarily good enough to go on to the NFL. But wide receiver, I think it's going to be very hard to get an impact guy there. So they have to hope that the players they have, someone surprises them.
Yeah, and that comes back to the general theme about significant progress next year. It's a lot of hoping. If we kind of talked about it early on. You can. You're just hoping that the defense maintains its level. You're hoping that, Art figures something out that he didn't figure out this year. You're hoping that there's a play. I mean, that's the problem. And when you went 1-10 with the team you have here, and you're year 4, and you're looking at another schedule that's pretty tough, that's the quandary with Rutgers football.
Yeah.
There you go, everybody. Yeah, thank you for that. Yep. Thanks for the yep. All right. Anything else, guys? How do you want to end this season? What's your final thought that you want to leave our?
How do we want to end the season? How about with a vacation, time off?
You're going straight to the rack.
Going back from July to now, when the credit card stuff happened to now.
Mr. Hardworking ditch digger here, working for a living.
No, but I mean, I think if there's one thing that the fans should know, I think they kind of get it from the podcast and everything that, none of us are enjoying, a 1-11 season. We don't enjoy covering a 1-11 season. We don't enjoy, between Cratch and I combined, I think we spent, probably 10 days combined in the Middlesex County Courthouse, this season. I mean, that's not, those aren't easy days of work. That's not what we want. Cratch would rather be doing a film review. I'd rather be doing, covering the team, big picture stuff. So, I mean, none of us have enjoyed it. So can we get it a day off or two?
Gun to your head. Well, it was tough, but it wasn't 2015 tough. You agree with me on that?
Ooh. No, I think it's, again, I mean, this might be a little bit too inside baseball, but at least with 2015, we knew that the coach was going. We pretty much had some certainty that that he was on his way out the door. So
we didn't know that until halfway through the season, though. We didn't know that until late. I mean, it wasn't. There was still a very tense couple of months beforehand. Before all that happened. Yeah.
I mean, they're similar, man. I mean, the Bullock, they had a player who was charged with attempted murder, and that happened, and you had the credit card stuff, and It's similar.
I will say this,
1-11. You know, at least that team was 4-8.
Everything happened.
They would have won in the finale. They get to 5-7.
But everything happened that 2015 year. I just remember, like, you had everything with Flood, you had the academic stuff, you had the arrests, and then like then you had the Leonte Carew thing. Like, I just remember thinking, oh my God. Now you've got the best play, like every day. Like there was something that happened for a couple of weeks there. And it was just, I mean, I will say this, 2015 was the only time I went to Rutgers Stadium and I would pull into the parking lot and sit there for 20 minutes because I didn't want to get out and go to the press box. That's different than this year. That's different than this year. That was a much higher level of tense and stress. And, you know, we speculated on Chris Ash, but, you know, certainly we knew the athletic director was coming back in Pat Hobbs. We didn't have that whole another layer of the academic stuff. So yeah, I would put that year ahead of this year as far as stress goes.
It's in the conversation. It's in the conversation. I probably agree with you.
Was it worse than the Giants last year? You've had 2 years.
You know, I was actually asked that on Twitter because I was thinking last two football teams I've covered are combined 4-24.
That's good.
2017 Giants, 2018 Rutgers. No, this season was not as. It was look. This was not a good football team, but they were not. The 2017 Giants were very unlikable.
Yeah.
And I don't need to go into immense detail, but that was not a likable group.
No.
Okay. This was a good group of good kids. You know, I mean, although we don't really have much interaction with them. I think Chris Ash, for all his struggles, I think he has a better grasp of what he's doing than Ben McAdoo did. I'm not saying that's a high bar to clear it anyway, but I do think that there are signs of optimism with this team. They're not enough, and I don't think that you can go down to Delaware and bet it's all going to come together and work out in the end. But I wouldn't say it was a trying year, but I wasn't there for 2015. It certainly was not as trying as 2017.
Well, there you go. It's trying, but not that trying. The Rutgers Rant podcast ends the season. I got to thank everyone who has both listened to this, who has put up with us, and especially the ones who interact with us on Twitter. We've really enjoyed being able to do that with you guys. We have a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to it. So with that, let's sign off for the final time in the 2018 football season. We'll be back again, I'm sure, a couple of times during the winter to talk about recruiting, basketball, or whatever. Maybe Kratz will do a live wrestling show by himself, because certainly I couldn't be able to help him there, and neither will Sarge. But all right, that's it for this season. Again, thank you very much, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.